All right, everybody, welcome to episode number 16 with my guest, Matt West. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm a little upset that it took 16 episodes for me to get the invite. Like 15 other guys were cooler than me. Come on, man. No, I'm doing good. I appreciate this. This is going to be fun.
All right, so before we get too far into this, why don't we give the listeners a little bit to know about yourself?
Okay. I grew up in a tiny little town of about 300 people in northeast Oklahoma. I grew up super, super shy. Never wanted to talk in front of people, and now it's what I do for a living. I got very, very fortunate and blessed to have an awesome career as an announcer in the PBR. I think I've been part of the announce team for the last 11 PBR World Finals. I did the American 3 times. Been very blessed to travel the world, and I'm the biggest bull riding fan in the world. So to get to do that job has been awesome. I own a gym in Oklahoma, a little gym in a little town called Nowhat. It's called Westfit. And I try to keep up with you, and I host a little podcast called Matt West Now, and try to do exactly what you're doing. Just try to tell the stories of some of the guys that I'm a fan of, and let fans see a different perspective and a different side of our athletes. So, man, I appreciate you having me on to do this, and you're killing it. The first 15 episodes are awesome.
Thank you. So, how did you find yourself getting into announcing rodeos and bull ridings?
I got forced to announce. If the complete truth of the story is, I had a friend of mine that popped off to a guy here and said, well, we could have done a better job announcing than the guy you had. And the guy basically, held my feet to the fire and forced me to do it. And so I announced a little kids bull riding, a junior bull riding. It was kids 17 and under, mutton busters, calf riders, sheep, everything. And I announced one of those junior bull riding events. I was completely terrified, hated it. I got done, and the lady said, hey, we're doing another one in a couple of weeks. Are you going to announce it? And I said, no, ma'am, I'll never do this again. This was a one-time thing. She said, well, I'll pay you $75 if you want to come back and do it. And I said, okay, what time do I need to be here? And that's what started it and snowballed into the career I have now. So, yeah, I got forced to do it.
All right, so you did bring up your podcast. So, how much do you think it helps grow the sport, like with people getting to hear the different side of these athletes or people that work in the PBR like you? How much do you think that helps the sport grow like it does?
I think it's important anytime any of us do anything outside of what our quote unquote job is to grow the sport. And again, case in point, like you talking to these athletes, I guarantee people learned things about Dalen Swearingen and Dakota Lewis that they didn't know beforehand. And that's what's important to me, because as a fan, we look for some sort of personal connection. I mean, you live in Maryland. You're obviously a Baltimore Orioles fan, right? Okay, because they're close to you. You have that connection. Am I right?
I'm just a baseball fan. I don't like choosing one specific team.
Yeah, but I assume that as a fan, like there's certain players we're drawn to. I was a diehard Ozzie Smith fan as a kid. I was a pro wrestling fan. I loved Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan would tell me to train, say my prayers, and take my vitamins. There was some sort of connection that I had with certain individuals, and I still to this day have that. And I think that that's the one thing that our sport desperately needs, because instead of just seeing 35 guys, I love seeing that Brendan Eldred is at home with his daughter, and he's super proud of her Monday through Thursday. And then when he goes on the weekends and he wins that event last season, and he told his daughter in an interview, like, I'm bringing this buckle home to her. And those are the things that I'm drawn to as a fan. And so the whole reason I started my podcast was I knew Mason Lowe from those little bitty junior bull ridings. And before Mason's accident, he and I were sitting down with some other people that work for the PBR, and they said, well, I didn't realize how funny Mason is. And I said, that's the problem. And I had been talking about the podcast, and Mason said, you start that podcast, I'm going to come be on it. And that's what happened. I mean, I decided then that I was going to start the podcast. It took me a lot longer to get it going, and I'm sad that I never got to have Mason on there. But people started to realize these athletes are so much bigger characters. They're funny, they're human, they have ups and downs just like everybody else, and I think that's what our sport needs.
You think that also makes you guys more approachable for the fans? Like I know, like I think it was in the podcast that you did with Jess Lockwood and Cody Webster. Like there would be people that come up and kind of like shaking, like meeting you guys. You think that's like nice that people like have the confidence now to walk up to you guys?
Absolutely, because we see people on TV all the time, and I'm guilty of it too. Because we see them on TV, we put them on some sort of pedestal, like they're unapproachable, or like it's not attainable for us to be in that spot that they're in as well. And I think that's the biggest thing is it gives people hope. It gives people hope to know that, you know what, I can do that job. I can be on TV every weekend. I can go into this industry or this field. Like if you're a baseball fan, seeing those guys on TV, if you got a chance to sit and listen to them or talk to them or meet them, then all of a sudden you realize like, hey, I can do that too. I can be that good person. I think it definitely does because you start to realize just how real our guys are, and they're no different than anybody else. And so, yeah, it certainly makes us, as a sport, makes everybody more approachable because you realize that, you know what, Jess Lockwood's just another guy. He's just a good human. The same Cody Webster's as down to earth as anybody that's ever lived, but a lot of people see him on TV and they think, oh my gosh, I could never go say hi. Well, Cody will go out of his way to say hi to fans. That's just the type of person he is. Our industry, and not just the PBR, but rodeo for the most part in general, everybody in Western sports understands that without fans, none of us have the lives we have. And so it's important for all of us to give back and to show our appreciation.
All right, so that's going to be something that that's going to ask like with fans later on. But so the next thing I want to move to is what was it like for you going to the finals and like whenever you get to say welcome to the PBR finals and that crack of pyro goes off right after you say that? What does that feel like as an announcer?
Craziest thing ever. Okay, because I grew up as a fan. Like I used to buy tickets to go sit and watch the PBR. I was such a fan. And when I got into announcing, my goal was to maybe one day do one PBR. And so the thought of being able to say, you know, welcome to night one of the PBR World Finals or Saturday night of the PBR World Finals, still to this day, and I've done 11 finals this last year in AT&T Stadium, it was as exciting as it was the very first time I did it. There's something special. Like if you are in this industry and that doesn't give you some sort of adrenaline rush and it doesn't make you just like get super excited, then you're in the wrong business. Like that's what we're supposed to feel. It's kind of hard to describe because I never thought I'd be able to do it. And even just our regular weekends, every single weekend, you know, welcome to the PBR's Unleash the Beast Tour. Let's meet the greatest bull riders in the world. I still get this really excited, kind of hair on the back of my neck standing up feeling because this is, in my opinion, this is the big leagues. This is what I always dreamed of being. Once I started announcing, this is where I had hoped I would be. This is where I dreamed about being from the second I picked up a microphone. And I'm here, and I don't ever take that for granted. So every time I get to do it is like the first time. Like I'm like a little kid. I get super excited.
So already this year, there's already been big moments like Ezekiel Mitchell and Marco Gucci on Smooth Operator. And then also back to 2020 with Jose riding Whoop off for 95 3/4 and clinching his world title. Was it like getting to announce that? But was it like getting to announce in those situations?
It's awesome because again, it goes back to me being a fan. And if you go back and you watch Ezekiel Mitchell's ride in particular, or even Jose's ride at the finals, you can hear, if you watch it on TV, I'm pretty sure you can hear me in the background screaming like a little kid. I was so excited. Clint was standing right next to me. When Jose rode Whoopa, we were jumping up and down. and there's a picture of like me and Clint Atkins high-fiving on the announcer stand. Mind you, we've been standing there talking to each other for hours at this point. That happens, and we're high-fiving, we're jumping up and down. And I did the same thing when Zeke, rode Smooth Operator. I did the same thing when Cooper Davis rode Smooth Operator a few years ago. Every time there's something big like that happens, I'm jumping up and down just like everybody that bought a ticket or everybody that's at the edge of their seat. I'm doing the same thing. And I think that's important for me in my job, is to never lose sight of being a fan. At the end of the day, that's the best part of it. So yeah, it's crazy to think that I got to sit there when that happened. I got to be there when Jess Lockwood won his first world title. I got to be there when Cooper Davis won his world title. I got to be there when guys like Chris Shivers and Guilherme Marchi retired. I'm there for every time that JB Mooney nods his head still to this day. It's crazy to think that I get to be there and be a part of those things.
So then also, speaking of that, was it like getting to go to so many historic venues in a normal year, like Madison Square Garden or the Staples Center, and walking to the announcer stand and seeing it's packed in these big and historic arenas?
It's as a kid, I never thought I would see New York City. I never thought I would go to LA. I never thought I would see these places, much less get to announce in Madison Square Garden. Every year I've ever been to New York City, I sneak over to Madison Square Garden early, and I'll go early to mid-morning and just kind of walk around the building. I like to go up to the top and sit in the very top row, take pictures from up there and just sit and look at the building. I did the same thing at AT&T Stadium. You mentioned Staples Center, T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Like those venues like that, those big buildings, the really historic places like Madison Square Garden, I like to go in and just sit and look around and think about all the things that have been there. Madison Square Garden was the first place that WrestleMania 1 happened there. There's so many legendary basketball games that have happened there. Same with AT&T Stadium. It's the biggest venue in North America. Me and my fiance, we jogged around the bottom of it, which it's a huge building. And then we ran stairs all the way to the very top row and just sat there and looked at it. I think that's one of the great things about this is getting to really appreciate those places. And I think I'm a little different than everybody else because that means as much to me as anything. Because growing up as a kid in middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and when I say I never thought I would see it, I mean I never thought I would see New York City in person, much less be working Madison Square Garden. I never thought I would go to Las Vegas, much less get to work there. So for me, it's super special, just because I still feel like a little kid when I go to those places.
So I just been kind of thinking this a little bit before we started the podcast, and like when I asked you about it, did you announce in Baltimore in 2012?
I think so. I really do, because I believe that like John Bones Jones had just had a UFC fight there or right after, and I remember him doing what's the dance, the Baltimore, like there's a little dance that the Ravens were doing at the time. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know about a dance.
I don't remember what it was, but I remember seeing John Jones walk down that hallway and thinking, oh, this is where that happened. And I think I was there in 2012. I know I announced that building a couple of times. It's a really cool old venue.
Yeah, because I keep on going over the like I always look back at old events, especially events I've been to, just for memories. And I think like that was my first event, and I think since you're an announcer there, that's just kind of a cool thing. Real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the first one you've ever been to?
Yeah, first one was actually, I think my first event was 2009, 2010, and it was a touring pro. Never really knew about it. Thought it was just a bull riding and an Eagle Bank Arena. And then, then Baltimore was my first Built Ford Tough Series event.
Okay, cool. Then we're going to say that I was announcing it so that I can say I was announcing the first time you came. So Yeah, for sure. And I really do think I was. I think I was there in 2012.
So, kind of curious, what is it like for you, like coming in Maryland, where it's somewhere where there's bull riding around here, but some people know about it and some people don't know about it.
Yeah, it's cool because the fans there are so different than they are in, say, Oklahoma and Texas. Because when we have bull ridings here, we have them all the time, and people tend to not get as excited because they see bull riding, they see great bulls. We have so many great rodeos around this area that it's not as exciting for a lot of our fans here in this part of the world. When we come up there, it's just on such a different level. The fans are so eager and so excited to be a part of it, and they make the show even more fun because the guys are going to continue to do what they do. The bulls are going to continue to do what they do. But when you add the fans that don't see it every weekend and they get to see it once or twice a year, and they're excited and eager to be a part of the show and participate and sing along with the songs the guys are playing, it makes it even more fun, and it reminds you how lucky we are to be doing this all over the country. I love it because we never had a major league baseball team where I lived in Oklahoma, and so if I would get to go to Texas or St. Louis, it was different because I would get to see that major league team once or twice a year. And for me, I always feel like I remember it being more exciting. So that's how I feel when we go to these markets that don't really have bull riding as much. When we go to Maryland, when we go to Massachusetts, when we go to New York City, you never think bull riding is going to be super popular in New York City, but it's crazy how excited people get. So it makes it a lot more fun.
So, kind of speaking of that real quick, I remember the night two in New York City last year. I was talking about this with Dylan Smith. He just gets launched by whatever that Red Bull was halfway across the arena, and everybody just erupts because they don't know what's happening. When they erupt like that over the littlest thing, how much does that still get you going when they could get loud over just like a dink of a ride, like a 50-point ride?
It's awesome because little things like that, and I remember exactly what you're talking about. That bull threw Dylan across the arena, and then he got back up. People are so excited to see that the extremism. I mean, that's not something you see every day, and to see a farm animal launch a guy in the air, yeah, it's different. But when he was okay, he got up and he pumped his fists, and the crowd went wild. And it's funny for us because it's like, oh, they're cheering for the things that we don't normally cheer for. But when everybody's having fun, that's what our sport is about. That's what the PBR is about. Our fans to have the most fun they can have. And yeah, it's fun. As long as they're invested and as long as they're entertained, it's all that matters.
All right. So, what was it like for you getting to announce, like in 2016, the World Finals at T-Mobile Arena, or just like this year being able to announce in such a weird and yet historic season for the PBR? Was it like announcing at the PBR World Finals any
It
year?
was it was a little different this year leading up to it because we talked about when we were in Texas for the PBR finals, there wasn't all of the fan interactions. Like I usually have a charity cornhole tournament that we raise money for the Western Sports Foundation, and the guys all come and we get with the fans and all play cornhole and raise money for a good cause. Flint always has his show outside the barrel. We always do all of these things around the World Finals, where this year we kind of just sat in our hotel room until it was time to go to the building. And it was very, very strange until we got to the building and started the show. Once the show started, it was exactly the same as it's always been. It was exciting. The energy level was up. I felt like we were at the PBR finals, but it was the few hours during the day where we weren't working while we were just getting ready. It just felt a little strange. PBR finals is a different level. It's the Super Bowl for us. So if you're not excited about that week, then again, you're in the wrong space. You need to go find something that excites you a little bit more because That's what these guys have worked for all year long, is to get to that week. And for me as an announcer, as a fan, that's the week I should be the most excited. And that never changes. It didn't change in Vegas. It didn't change in Texas. It doesn't matter if we have the PBR finals in your backyard. It's gonna be the exact same, because that's what those guys have worked for.
So was it ever any different making that transition in Vegas from the Thomas and Mack to the T-Mobile Arena?
Yeah, it was very different for a number of reasons. Thomas and Mack is off of what is known as the Las Vegas Strip. Thomas and Mack has so much history in Western sports, with the National Finals Rodeo being there for so long. And there were so many great moments. That's where Justin McBride won his world titles. That's where Adriano won his world titles. There's those historic moments that when you look back, you remember being at that building. The day that we walked into T-Mobile Arena, and our team went to T-Mobile months before it actually opened, and months before we had the first PBR finals there. When you walk into that building, it feels special. It felt huge. It felt brand new, state of the art. It felt like the place where we should have the PBR finals. And so while all of those historical moments happened at Thomas and Mack, for me, it was good to start a new chapter. And I think it's obvious T-Mobile is now our home. It's different because the NFR still goes to Thomas and Mack. We have a different venue right there in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip. It's state of the art. It's an unbelievable building. So yeah, it's the best place possible to host the PBR finals.
So I know everybody in the PBR has a connection to Vegas just because of the finals and just what it can provide for somebody in a week. Was it like seeing the town of Vegas grow sports wise, like have now the Vegas Golden Knights and the Las Vegas Raiders, and even pushing for another baseball team? Was it like seeing the city grow that much?
It's cool because it means that city's doing well. And in a small way, it almost feels like we were part of that, even if it's just for 1 week a year. We draw more attention to a city that it really is. It's a great place. No matter what you like to do. Vegas is so different than any other place in the world. And so, yeah, anywhere that starts to grow like that, I'm an American. I love to see cities in America flourish. I love to see people in this country do well and succeed. And so it's just my nature to think, yeah, they're killing it. That's awesome. Whatever's working, keep doing it. And so, yeah, it's great to see, again, that we've had so much history there in our sport in that city. Now the Raiders are going to be there, and I start thinking, okay, is there something that the PBR can do with the Raiders? Or if they get a baseball team there, then can one of our bull riders go throw out a first pitch at a Las Vegas game? Things like that. And it's just, there's so many opportunities. So of course it's exciting.
So I want to move to the topic of the year 2020. So was it like at the start of the year seeing the Unleash the Beast and the Velocity Tour like break so many attendance records, go to so many new cities, and sold out almost every single night? And like, was it just like seeing that start to the year, just like absolutely I don't even know how to describe it other than be really successful at the beginning of the year?
The beginning of the year was so awesome. Like you say, we start out in those big cities, those big markets, we're selling out arenas, and you think, man, this is going to be the biggest year ever. And that's how it started. And then all of a sudden, everybody's excited. When you start in New York City, you go to LA, those places like that, AT&T Stadium, and the crowds are bigger than they've ever been, then you're continuing to get more and more motivated to be better at your job, because you know what, we're climbing, we're in the major leagues, and we're getting better every day. Then all of a sudden COVID hits, and it's scary. It's weird to do an event with nobody in the stands. It's weird to think we don't know if we're going to get to do any more events. And it was exciting again, and kind of the same feeling, because we were the last sport to keep going. You know, when we were in Duluth, Georgia, the rest of the sports world had shut down. We were in Duluth and we just did a regular PBR event in an empty building with no fans. It was strange, but we all were super excited because we knew we were doing something special. And then you fast forward to April and May when we started going to Guthrie and we started doing those just for TV events with no fans. We were the first sport back. And so we all felt like we were making history and that we were really a part of something special, just like we did starting in New York City with, you know, record attendance, or LA with record attendance. We felt like we were doing that same thing. We were doing something that the rest of the world was watching and seeing and realizing that it can be done. And so you look back at it now and yeah, it was strange times, but it was super exciting because nobody else was doing it. We were the only ones getting to do it. And so that's something that it's like all the PBR finals buckles I have, you can never take those away from me. You know, I got to do those. You can never take it away from all of us that we were the first sport back putting on events. We were the last sport out. And I mean, that's what history is always gonna be.
So that's kind of going to be one of my next questions. So going into Duluth, no fans, obviously, and then you just start seeing notifications come in, like Rudy Gobert on the Utah Jazz gets COVID, and the NBA decides to shut down that night, or the very next day, the NHL, the MLB just put a pause on everything. When you start seeing those notifications coming at that time, what does that feel like when you're somebody that works in the professional sports world?
Scary. It was very scary to think that all of our events could shut down and that we could all be without a job. And I know that there's small business owners and there's people across this whole country that have lost their jobs, and that's heartbreaking. I mean, it absolutely breaks my heart for somebody to not be able to go to work and provide for their families. And we started stressing about that, just like everybody else in the world, and started wondering, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to pay our bills? How are we going to move forward? We were in the same boat as a lot of the world. The positives for us started coming very quickly when we knew that our CEO, Sean Gleason, and the team was working to try to put a plan together and put these events together safely, where we could go do those TV events. And so we were constantly hopeful that we were going to get back to work. But there was a month there where we were just stuck at home. And my fiance and I, we decided right away that we don't know how long this is going to last, but we're going to make the most of it. So we're going to just enjoy every single second we have at home. And I think that's one of the things. I did a whole podcast about mindset. And I think that's one of the things that we all have to learn to do is how we deal with things. Like, you know, not everything in life that happens to us is easy, and it's not the way we want it to happen. But what we can do is we can learn from it, we can grow from it, and we can figure out how to better implement those things in our lives. So, like, if I was a kid getting picked on, it's not fun, it sucks. But I also know that I can turn that around. And when I'm older, I can start talking to kids and treat those kids differently because I understand how I was affected in the past. So I want to give somebody else a better experience moving forward. We did that at home, and we knew that we were stuck. And so we were going to work on little things. Like, we were going to decorate our house different. We were going to play with our dogs as much as we could and just pray that things worked out. And thankfully, things did work out, and we got back to work. And, you know, who knows how long it'll last. But I'm just thankful for every time we get to go on a weekend, and whether it's in Del Rio, Texas, or Okeechobee, Florida, or New York City, every chance we get to go to work, I'm super thankful.
All right, so that also had kind of led into one of my next questions I had for you. What is it like having a CEO like Sean Gleason that cares so much to get everybody back to work, and he did it in such a short amount of time? What is it like having a CEO like that?
It's awesome. It really is. It's cool to know that a guy cares about, and he knows that if the athletes aren't going to these events, they're not making a living. So go back to Brennan Eldred, for example. You know, Brennan's got that new baby girl at home. How does he put food on the table for his family without going to these events? Sean understood that. He understood that we have an entire organization that relies on these events. And it's, yeah, I'm so grateful for Sean and the entire organization that they kept working and kept trying to move forward. I kind of want to vote for him for president at times, just because he wanted everybody to get back to work, and he wanted people to keep their lives going forward. And I think that's important for all of us to remember, is we have to continue to move forward every day in some way, shape, or form. We've got to keep taking steps to progress forward. So yeah, I'm really glad that he realized that. It was awesome to know how hard he was working. Not just him, the entire organization was working diligently to make these things happen. So very, very cool.
So when you guys were in Guthrie, and then also once you guys left Guthrie, did you guys ever realize that you guys are part of sports history, being the first to come back, and then also providing the plans for the NBA, the NHL, like the big sports in the world to come back? Did you guys ever realize you're part of that history?
Yeah, we did. We very much realized that we had people from the UFC, people from the NBA, the NFL. We had everybody looking at us. We knew going into those events that everyone's attention was on us to see if we could make this happen. And I know that a lot of the world was thinking we would fail, and everybody in sports was hoping we could succeed, because then they would realize that, you know what, we can do it too. And so yeah, we had a lot of conversations about that. Myself, Clint Atkins, Richard Jones, Flint Rasmussen, the bullfighters, the bull riders, all of us, we talked about it. Like, we're a part of sports history. It might not be the biggest headlines on Sports Center, on ESPN or things like that, and it might not get the attention that we feel it deserves, but we know the reality of it. And the reality of it was, yeah, I really feel like the PBR changed the scope of sports history moving forward by doing those events and being the first ones to come back. So yeah, we realized right away that we were doing something big.
All right, so that just made me think of another question. So speaking of sports history, and then also the PBR and Western sports growing so much in such a quick amount of time, was it like how much does it help it grow when you have guys like JB doing stuff with Monster Energy and having tons of views on YouTube, or like Bushwhacker when he was bucking, he got into, I think, ESPN, or like this past week, like for, one of the UBF bullfighters, Justin Josie, was on TBS on the Go Big Show. How much do these things, especially like Justin Josie going for $100,000 on a TV show, how much do these big things help the sport grow so much?
It's huge. It's so important that these things continue to happen. Little things like Jess Lockwood and I got to go be on Theo Vaughn's podcast. We got so many new fans because Theo had us sit and have a conversation with him for a little bit on his podcast. So many people that had never heard of this sport, didn't know anything about it, started listening to it, got interested, saw it on TV, or maybe bought a ticket, and then we got new fans. Justin Josie, I guarantee, just got a whole lot of new fans from the Go Big show the other day, because people have never seen anything like that. The same with JB. JB is a guy that like UFC fighters love to watch because of how tough he is. Bushwhacker, you talk about all the magazines he was in, and it just opens up the eyes to people that have never seen the sport, heard of the sport, know anything about it. And if 1 out of every 10 people that sees that magazine article or that YouTube video, if 1 out of every 10 of those people buys a ticket to an event, that helps so many of us continue to, like I said, pay our bills or provide for our families. And so it's important that those things keep happening, and that more and more of those things keep happening. It's important that there's podcasts like you that are popping up and continuing to tell these stories, because I guarantee you some of your friends that listen, or some of the people that listen to your podcast might not have ever heard of a Dakota Lewis. And then they start hearing he's a what? He's a bull rider and he's got a family and all these things, then they're gonna start paying attention. Well, I got to see this. And that's how our sport continues to grow. That's why we've been growing so well over the last few years. So super, super important.
All right. So I want to move back to the 2020 topic, and then after that, I want to move to something kind of like with that. So with the 2020 topic, what's it like after the long spring and the long summer of not seeing any fans? What was it like getting to see fans back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for the championship of the Monster Energy Team Challenge?
It was almost like holding your head underwater in a swimming pool for an hour and then popping up and getting that first breath. It was so refreshing to see people. And we made up our minds before the event started that if there was 5 people in the audience or if there was 5,000 people in the audience, it didn't matter. Like, we were just so excited to see fans again and know that they were as excited as we were to be there. Yeah, it was like taking that first breath after holding your breath underwater forever, because it's just so refreshing, and we needed it. We really needed it, and it was, yeah, it's something I don't think any of us are gonna forget ever. The first time we got to be back in front of a crowd, we waited months to do that, and so we had a blast.
So what was it like going then to Bismarck for the first UTB back with fans, and then it's Chad Berger holding an event with just his bulls? What does that say about a guy like Chad, and what does that also say about the growth of the bull industry?
So for everybody, Chad's event is super historical. It's been really, really big touring pro event forever. They've live streamed it. It's just an event all the guys love going to. I didn't get to go in 2020 because of COVID protocol. I had COVID, and so I missed an event in Guthrie, and I missed Bismarck. I didn't get to go to those events because of COVID. And so, like everybody else, though, I sat at home and I watched it on Ride Pass, and it was no different. I cheered just like everybody else that was watching on Ride Pass or CBS Sports Network. And I would text the guys and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I know Chad was very, very excited to have everybody back there. I know that the PBR was very thankful that community let them have that event there. And so I wish I could have been there to watch Colton Jesse get the win, because he's a really good friend of mine, and I think he's a great guy. I'm sad that I missed it, but I'm glad that the guys got to go and that they had a big weekend.
All right. So then, so after that event, a couple months later, with the World Finals, we had talked about, was there any point in time in the year where you thought Jose was going to be the champion? There's no stopping even before the finals?
Every time he nodded his head. I think every time he rode a bull, it was like, man, can they catch him? Can they catch him? And then knowing the sport of bull riding, you cross your fingers that he stays healthy. And if he can stay healthy, he can finally get that world title. Granted, the guys behind him were looking really good at times, especially like Joao. Everybody was cheering for Joao, and it was like, man, this is going to be such a great world finals. But I think people knew Jose was going to continue to do everything he could do. And it was just whether or not he stayed healthy. Thankfully, he stayed healthy. And I don't know that I've ever seen a guy so locked in the sport. But we saw the first event this year, how quickly things could change. And that's what scared us at the end of last season, was like, just stay healthy and you've got the best shot ever. Wins his world title, and then the first bull of 2021 breaks his ankle. So it's just a reminder of how quickly things can change and how quickly things can happen.
So speaking of that, real quick, how much humbling of a sport do you think this is for somebody, knowing that you could go from a champ like that to then being at the bottom so quick? Like even Jess, when he breaks his jaw, or last year when he looked so good to start the year and he tore his hamstring on I'm Legit too. How much of a humbling sport is it knowing that you could be at the top and then you're at the bottom like that?
Well, I think it's the most humbling sport in the world. I think it's the most humbling sport in the world for a multitude of reasons. One, like you said, you can be the number one guy and cruising towards a world title and then break an ankle or get hurt, and then all of a sudden it's completely ripped away from you. Joao, look at him. He's the number 2 guy going into the world finals and then doesn't get to compete because of COVID protocol. Had to sit at home and watch Jose go win the world title. It's the only sport in the world where you can lose your life practicing. And so you have to remain humble. All of our guys know that is a possibility. And so as boisterous and as charismatic and confident as our guys are at times, you got to realize that it goes back to what we talked about guys being super approachable. They are the most alpha athletes on the planet because this sport can literally take your life. But at the same time, with that alpha mentality comes an incredible amount of humble. And I think I think those two go hand in hand when they're that extreme. I think when, the danger element and the extreme part of the sport is so high that humble comes hand in hand.
So speaking of that, the podcast he did with Cooper Davis, he had literally admitted that he's treating it like a business. And then once he broke his neck, after that, he went back just to having fun.
Yep.
And look at the success he's having in 2021. Look at the back half of the season that he had. When people treat like a business like that, how much do you see a struggle in them? And then once they do start to have fun again, how much success do you see from them?
Everybody's different. And that's one thing that a lot of guys, it takes a little longer to realize. JB Mooney's always had this mentality of like, he was going to do what JB does, and JB can get by with smoking cigarettes and doing whatever JB does. A guy like Jess Lockwood has the exact opposite approach. Jess Lockwood spends all day in the gym. He watches everything he eats. He's constantly doing yoga and training. So they're two totally different mentalities. Cooper Davis is a guy that it has to be fun or he just doesn't like it. And when he goes in and he's trying to show up at work, it's just like my job. When I go to work and I just try to have fun, that's when I enjoy my job the most. But if I sit down and I spend hours upon hours preparing and studying, then it starts to feel like a job. Then when I finally get to the arena, I'm tired. I've got all this information in my brain where instead of just going and having fun, but my partner Clint at times will sit down and he'll log all this information and he'll be so prepared that, he's got all this information. We're two totally different styles. Bull riders are the same. Some of them are pretty low key and laid back. Some of them have to. Keyshawn Whitehorse is a great example. He'll put his headphones in, he'll get in a hallway, he'll stretch, he'll warm up for what feels like forever by himself. A lot of the Brazilians will get together, they'll get in a room, they'll get a Bible out, they'll all pray together. Everybody has their different way that they approach the sport. And for Cooper just needs to show up right before the bull riding starts and laugh and cut up and have fun and go win everybody's money. I mean, it's that simple for him. When he's having fun, I think he's one of the greatest ever to do it.
All right. Speaking of Cooper real quick, Okeechobee, Cooper, and Colton were the only two to go 3 for 3. Was it like seeing a guy like Colton Fritzland win the NFR and then come in to his first Unleash the Beast and win it?
That was really, really cool because Colton and I had messaged back and forth during the NFR. And I didn't know. We had mutual friends and everything. And I told him, I think it was round 3 or so, he won the round. And I sent him a message and I said, "Man, great job tonight. Yeah, now go take their money." And he responded. We went back and forth, and then when he showed up, I actually had him on this little pre-show that we're doing for PBR's Facebook Live right before every performance, and we got to talking about that. And it was the first time I'd really got to like visit with him, and he's such a nice guy. And we thought, well, the chances of winning his first event, it doesn't really happen that often. But he went in there and he had fun. He rode that first bull, made it look easy, rode the second bull, and now I think we're seeing a young man that has a potential to be a superstar. I think he's already, already has everybody's attention. I'm excited to see what he can do this weekend.
So actually, yeah, that just made me think of that. When you see a guy like Colton after winning his first event, and then that 15-15 draw comes out, and you see Whoopah right next to his name, when you see the draws come out, what does that feel like?
You're going to find out real quick how good he is. If he steps up and makes a ride on that bull like Jose did at the World Finals, then look out, because he becomes one of the favorites to win a world title this year. That bull is really, really good. And so if you see him try that bull, I mean, it's a pretty big litmus test in finding out where a guy's at. And more importantly, if he rides, how big it's going to be, and then what he does the next day. If he bucks off, how he bounces back, and what he does the next day. So great thing about this sport is every time you nod your head, you get to either prove what you're made of, or you get to learn, what you can do to get better. And so I think every ride for Colton from this point forward is going to be important.
So speaking of a guy like Colton and him winning the NFR, you had the chance to go to the NFR this past year. How different is it to step into a venue that's a baseball stadium compared to so many other venues that's like NFL, basketball, hockey? How much different is it from those to then seeing a rodeo arena on the diamond that just hosted the World Series?
I'm a huge baseball fan, so it was awesome. I thought it was so cool to see, the baseball stadium transformed into a rodeo arena. I'm also a huge rodeo fan, so the fact that they were getting to have the National Finals rodeo, again, I didn't care if it was in a baseball stadium, a football stadium, or a parking lot somewhere, knowing that so many people in our industry got to go and live out that dream that they had worked for. Getting to see guys like Colton, getting to see guys like Boudreaux Campbell, Sage Kimsey, Chase History, the barrel racers that have worked so hard all year long, put so many miles on to try to qualify to the NFR. That's such a huge accomplishment. It's like playing baseball all season and and your team winning the playoffs, getting to the World Series, and then them deciding we're not going to play a World Series game. I don't care if it's on a little league field. I want them to be able to play that game. And so for me, that was the best part of it, was just knowing that so many people had their dreams come true. So many people got to continue to pursue their livelihood. And for me, that was the big win, like that everybody got to have that rodeo. I didn't care where it was at as long as they got to do it. And so I was proud to be there as a fan. I was excited for everybody and loved every second of it.
So you did bring up that you're a big baseball fan. At the beginning of the year, the MLB had so many issues with trying to agree to bring everybody back and almost ended up going on strike. What do you think that does for a sport when players and owners just say that they just can't get along?
I think it can do one of two things. It can either hurt both sides, or both sides can learn how important it is to communicate. And that's my hope for everything, is that, every sport, and I don't care if it's bull riding, if it's baseball, if it's football, you have people that work in ownership positions, you have people that work in management positions that help the industry continue to grow, that help the sport get bigger, that work on TV deals, that bring those fans in. bring more fans and sponsors and everything in. But at the end of the day, you also have those athletes. Without those athletes, you don't have the sport. And so that those two sides have to communicate and work together. And, I think that's the most important asset any of us have, is the ability to communicate, whether that's a friendship, a marriage, a business, a sport. We all have to communicate. And I think that's where you realize how important communication is, when two sides can't get on the same page, and it almost costs both sides. They've got to learn to work together. And that's the best part of seeing those things happen, is when they do come together and they learn from each other. It's no different than politics, or if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan and I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, the one thing we can agree on is that we love football and can't wait to watch those two teams play, right? And so I think that happens a lot in business too, where you've got to learn to find that commonality. And you might like the color red and I might like the color blue, but somewhere together we can mix those two and agree that they're both awesome colors, So yeah, I'm glad that they got everything worked out.
Well, have you ever realized how much bad stuff actually happens between owners and players in the MLB?
Yeah. It's a business, and with any business, there's going to be good and bad. There's going to be a roller coaster. You're going to have your highs and your lows. And at the end of the day, when money's involved in anything, it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And so, yeah, it's negotiations, it's no different than guys working on sponsorships. What is the value? What is this person worth? What do these players feel like they bring to the table? And what does management feel like their value is? And so, that's just life. That's business. There's a lot of negativity that gets seen when business gets involved.
Yeah, the reason why I brought that up is because I don't know if you have heard it, but at the beginning of the MLB offseason, the Philadelphia Phillies said that they lost $2 billion due to the pandemic. And then it turns out somebody in the organization comes back and says, nope, they didn't lose that $2 billion. They only lost $145 million. And they said they lost $2 billion because they didn't want to put so much money in to bring somebody back.
Right.
When they promised somebody else on the team, unfortunately, that they would bring him back.
Right. And so then they start to manipulate numbers to try to make things work. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, everybody lost substantial amounts of money. And the only way to get that money back is to get back to work. And so if I own the Philadelphia Phillies, the one thing I want to do is put my team on the field and let them play baseball and let fans come enjoy that sport again. Same thing in bull riding, same thing in football, same thing with my gym here. The biggest thing for me, I want my gym to be open so that people can come in here and enjoy it and get healthy. That's the only way to sustain any kind of business, is to open the doors and open that business up and let people go to work. So everybody lost a lot of money. And everybody has a different amount when it comes to a lot of money. For some people, $100 is a lot of money. For the owner of the Philadelphia Phillies, $100 million is a lot of money. So we all struggled. And for me, the best solution is getting back to work. And so put those players on the field and let them do what they do.
All right, so kind of just curious now. So you being mostly in the Western sports world, but still being a big sports fan, was it like at the end of the 2019 year, seeing the Astros come out and they just cheated their way into the World Series many times, like past 2 or 3 seasons?
I have a hard time with that because like I said, I'm a baseball guy and I like things done the old-fashioned way. It completely tarnishes everything they've done. And it frustrates me because these guys are getting paid millions of dollars to do something that people dream about doing. And they're getting to do it. And instead of doing to the best of their ability and doing things the right way, they're cheating. It's like finding the perfect fiance or the perfect husband or wife and then going out and messing around. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like you're living a dream. You're living a dream that most people can only dream about. Why screw that up? But for some reason, again, when money gets involved, people start to do strange things. I think it ruins everything that those guys have ever done in sports, unfortunately, because I know that some of those players are really good human beings, and I know that some of them have spent a lot of time with like some kids I know at children's hospitals and things like that, and so I respect them for those things. But if you can't just go out and be the best, then I don't know. That's a mistake. Anytime you cheat on things like that, it's a mistake.
So speaking of that, also, so many people think first when they hear the Astros cheating, they just rob the Yankees and the Dodgers of World Series titles. But then also when you look at the big picture, somebody on the Oakland Athletics had said he faced against the Astros in 2017 and he got hammered and he got cut and hasn't picked up a baseball since.
Right.
And then you realize that's when the Astros were cheating.
Yeah.
You've said that people should be like being in work helps everybody come back, but when they have taken so many careers like that,
yeah,
what could you say about that?
People are too selfish. People are so selfish that they're so worried about themselves winning, they don't care how many other lives they affect. And I think that we all, I think that's an eye-opening experience just in a regular day-to-day life. If you're so caught up in your own self and you're only worried about how things affect you, I mean, you could be hurting other people's lives. You know, it's like we make decisions, and we make decisions basically on how they affect us. I think there's certain times where you got to stop and you got to look and see, okay, how's this going to affect somebody else? How is this going to affect other people? Just like you say, you know, they went out, they cheated, they won. Okay, cool. How many guys lost their jobs because of things like that? How many guys were trying their guts out and now they can't go back and they can't go to work and they can't provide for their families? So you're robbing somebody else out of their opportunity. And I don't think that's fair. I think sometimes there's a time and a place to be selfish and to worry about doing what's best for you. But I think there's also a bigger time and place to care about everybody else too. You've got to look at the big picture and what's most important. And to me, that's easy. Like doing the right thing is the most important thing. Always. Even if it doesn't work out the best for you at that point in time, doing the right thing is always the best thing to do. It's always the best option.
So then also speaking of that, so many players, well, not so many, a couple players, like a big example, Josh Reddick, he never apologized for the cheating. And I believe he said in an interview he wouldn't change anything. When they say something like that, how much do you think more does that tarnish the Astros and the sport?
If you admit to doing something wrong, or you're caught doing something wrong and you don't feel remorse and you don't feel sorry for it, then I have no use for you as a human being. I mean, it's that simple. Like if you get caught doing something wrong and you genuinely feel bad about it, or it upsets you and you are remorseful and apologetic and you really are sorry, then you can learn from that and you can grow from it. But if you're like, yeah, I'd do it again, then you're a horrible human being. And I got no reason to spend any more time on that person. So it just shows a lot about their character.
All right. So I want to get off this topic.
By the way, I think we should get everybody that cheated in baseball should have to ride a bull, period. I think they should all get on a bull. That's my solution.
That would be absolutely funny to see. I just want to see like a guy like Jose Altuve, who's just way smaller than a normal height for a bull rider, and probably not even as muscular as those guys like and the hips and all that. I could just imagine how that's gonna go.
Yeah, it'd be rough, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I'd pay to see it though.
I just want to see some guy that knows the Astros just come up with like a Houston Invitational, and it's just everybody in the Astros.
Yeah, make it happen.
All right, so I want to get off of this topic and then move back to the rodeo topic.
Okay.
Speaking of Houston, the Houston rodeo just got canceled this week, and there's so many other rodeos just like it, where it's rodeos then a concert, including kind of like Cheyenne.
Yeah.
When there's so many rodeos like that are still on the schedule, does that create a panic? Especially know that Cheyenne is also on the schedule for you guys.
It not so much panic. Like you say, personally, it goes back to like it breaks my heart because I know how many people are out of a job. Yeah, it sucks to not get to go announce the PBR at Cheyenne. But for me, I look at the big picture and I think, okay, that's not just me. How many people work at that rodeo? How many people make a living by taking their little booth space and, the arts and crafts that they built, or the store that they have, and they go set up a booth there for a week in Cheyenne and they make a big portion of their living doing that? How many people work at hotels that aren't going to be full and occupied during Cheyenne? How many, and this is where it really gets me, is like you mentioned those concerts that come into Cheyenne, not just the musician, not just the people on stage, but the people that drive the buses, that work on the road crews. I mean, entertainers and musicians employ so many people behind the scenes that are just sitting at home right now with no income, with no jobs, no livelihood, and no way to provide for their families. That is devastating to me as a human being. It breaks my heart to know that there's so many people like that. I mean, millions of people are out of a job because these industries are not flourishing, because everybody keeps canceling things. And it breaks my heart that I'm not going to get to go and announce at Cheyenne maybe, or Houston or whatever it is. But for me, it's the big picture. So many concerts at Houston, same thing, like you mentioned. And the people behind the scenes that rely on those events, that rely on those concerts, or our crew, our arena crew. We've got so many guys behind the scenes that show up a week in advance to put the arena up, to make sure all the signs are up, to make sure that the pins are just right and everything's set up so that the TV crews can come in and go to work. There's so many people behind the scenes, and I can't stand when people are like, oh, well, and I'll use Garth Brooks, for instance. Well, big deal. Garth Brooks isn't on tour. He's got plenty of money. Yeah, that might be true. But for the hundreds of people that Garth Brooks employs, that works on his tour, that works in these different venues around the world, those people are dependent on it. And so that's what breaks my heart the most.
I mean, yeah, like speaking of that, I just remembered, like, I think it's a Zach Brown band. Like, he literally said it that in a video, he's cutting so many people in his crew that he's worked with so many years, and you just see him shedding so many tears. I mean, like, that's kind of when it just settles in, like, so many people are out of a job that they know.
Yep. Yeah, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to know that so many people that close to him, because they are close. The people that work for him, he sees every week, for however many months a year. They spend all that time on the road together, and now all of a sudden you just can't provide because they can't tour. And that's it's sad. But hopefully that all changes soon. Fingers crossed.
All right. So I want to move back to the topic of kind of like sports in general, not just Western sports.
Mm-hmm.
So just out of curiosity, first of all, who did you pull for the Super Bowl
this year?
Yeah.
Tampa Bay. My fiance's, she likes Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and I just think it's so cool that Tom Brady has been around so long and is still so good at what he does. And I got to meet Gronkowski a few years ago when he came to the PBR in New York City, and he was such a nice guy, such a cool, down-to-earth guy. I really enjoyed Gronk, and so I pulled for Tampa Bay. But I love Patrick Mahomes, and I put out a tweet that he was so easy to cheer for. My buddy Keith started giving me crap about it. And I said, anybody that works their ass off to do what they do, I'm going to cheer for. And Patrick Mahomes tries his butt off. Every play of every game, he tries his guts out. And so I'm a big Patrick Mahomes fan, but I was pulling for the Bucks. I was pulling for the Tampa Bay.
So speaking of Tampa Bay, so many people find so many ways to bash about Tom Brady, but in reality, he's just the greatest of all time to play as an NFL quarterback. Why do you think people so many times find a way to just find something negative about him when he's really the greatest?
I think we live in a society that no longer recognizes hard work the way it should be recognized. I'm obviously quite a bit older than you. When I was a kid, if I saw somebody successful, I wanted to know how they got to that level of success so that I could follow in their footsteps, so that I could work that hard and try to do what they've done. And I think that a lot of people now in society see people that are successful and they think, well, that person doesn't deserve it any more than I do. Well, that's wrong, because that person worked their ass off to get to where they're at. Tom Brady's worked his butt off his entire life to be a successful quarterback. He wasn't the number one draft pick in the draft. He wasn't, the MVP in his first season. He didn't have everything gifted to him. He had to work his tail off to get to where he's at. And I think that's awesome. It should make us all want to work that hard to be that great. People see somebody that is successful and they want to diminish them and bring them down to their level instead of trying to raise our own game and get to a higher level. I think it's easier to drag somebody down than it is to lift somebody up. And that's why I love people that are constantly encouraging other people. Did you see the video with Tom Brady and Drew Brees where Tom was talking to Drew's kids and he was bragging about their dad and playing catch with them? And he's lifting that guy up. Here's the greatest of all time, but he's telling these kids how great their dad is. And that's what makes a person special. And that's the way we should all live. That truly is the way we should all find a way every single day to lift other people up.
Just curious, have you seen on Twitter yesterday, I think it just popped up people are trying to find ways to bring race into Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We're all humans. We're all Americans. I don't care where you're from, what color you are, what your background or ethnicity is. We should all just love everybody the same. And that's the easiest solution. Stop talking about it and start living by example. Start leading by example and stop talking about it. That's what needs to happen. And just take all of that stuff completely out of the situation. Take it all out of the conversation. And my thing is, if we stop drawing attention to things like that and we stop talking about it, then it's easier for us to realize that we're all human, period. We all wake up with the same opportunity every day, and we all, we have the same opportunity to love each other. So
you think that's one thing that makes the PBR so great? Because it's not like any other sport where it's okay, I'm supposed to go after this guy, I'm supposed to take him down, or I'm supposed to hockey, I'm supposed to knock this guy into the boards. Whereas in the PBR, it's not you against the rider, it's you against the bull. You think that's one thing that makes the PBR so great?
Absolutely. And you hear the guys all the time talk about how they're cheering for the other guys to do just as well as they are. That's what's great about bull riding and rodeo in general. You do your job and then you go cheer for everybody else to do the exact same thing. It's not one man against another man. It's if this guy does his job to the best of his ability, he succeeds. That's it. Then his job is over and he can start cheering for the next guy, vice versa. Yeah, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be a champion. But at the end of the day, you handle your business the best of your ability, and then that's over. Nobody, what this guy does doesn't affect how this guy performs. And so the individualistic part of our sport, yeah, it of course makes it a lot a lot easier to be a fan of, in my opinion.
All right. So I kind of want to move back to a topic that brought up, like of Tom Brady being the GOAT. I want to move it to Western sports. JB being one, if not the greatest, one of the greatest to play this sport. Just curious, in your opinion, do you think if JB would have been on tour for the whole 2020 season and been as healthy as he was when he came back, you think he possibly could have had a chance to try to put his name in the world title a little bit?
I think this is my opinion, and some people will think I'm crazy, but I think anytime JB Mooney shows up to an event, whether it's today or 10 years ago, I think anytime JB shows up with a bull rope, he can win. That's always going to be in my opinion until he's been retired for a decade, and then I might change my mind. But if he shows up at a bull riding and he has a bull rope, healthy or not, I think he's got a chance to win. I think he's that good. I think he's always a threat to win. The unfortunate thing for him is he's not been healthy. I don't know that he's ever been healthy. He won 2 world titles and he wasn't healthy either one of those years. So, it's hard for me to doubt the guy. I can't. I'm as big a JB Mooney fan as anybody on the planet. I know that he's hurt all the time, but if he shows up, I think he's got a chance to win.
So speaking of JB, and then also like speaking of like way earlier in this podcast, we had brought up like so many guys like doing things to support others. With JB starting the UBF, what does that say about a guy like JB?
Well, I mean, it shows that he realizes he can give back. It shows that he wants to stay involved in the industry in some way. But I think the biggest thing it shows is that he's a fan of bullfighting. I think it shows how much respect he has for those guys and for what they do, and he wants to be involved. Same with Cody Webster. Cody Webster makes a good living doing what he's doing, but he also goes back and he does these schools constantly. He's constantly trying to help other people. People are scared to talk to JB, I think, sometimes, but I think JB would love to help other bull riders more than what people realize. It's that whole giving back. Everything ultimately comes at a certain point in your life where it doesn't matter what you've done or what your resume says. To me, it's how many other people can you help? And I think he's doing that with the UBF. I think he's giving bullfighters an opportunity to go out and make a living. I think he's given them an opportunity to be, put in positions like Justin Josie, where he can go out and be on a television show. And there's other organizations out there. There's a number of different sports entities, whether it's the UBF or the BFO or PBR or what used to be the CBR or the PRCA or whatever it is. They all involve someone giving back in some capacity. So,
all right. So that just made me think of something like with JB, like starting the UBF. One of the first events that he had hosted was at Dale Brisby's. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Like a guy like Dale Brisby, and then also Cody Webster with these big YouTube channels. You think that's also been something that's helped this sport grow so much when you got so many like these guys, like having such big platforms and such a big app?
Absolutely. Dale Brisby, I was going to look. Dale Brisby has, I don't know, it's probably, Dale Brisby has 657,000 followers on Instagram. If he shows up at a UBF bullfight or a PBR and somebody's never heard of it or whatever, or they see Dale there, of course, if they're a Dale Brisby fan, they're going to go. It's no different than if I'm a Hulk Hogan fan and he shows up at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, well, all of a sudden, maybe I want to go buy a ticket and watch a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game and maybe see Hulk Hogan. I think the same thing happens with, Dale Brisby, JB Mooney, Cody Webster, Cooper Davis, people like that, Jess Lockwood. If they see, this person going to this event, well, hey, if it's good enough for so-and-so, it's good enough for me. So, yeah, definitely helps the sport.
All right. So back to the JB topic. how kind of cool is it to see Jagger going around with him to so many events and kind of also still like seeming like literally a mini JB?
That's the JB that people don't get to see often enough. And now I'm glad that PBR is starting to put it more on social media and things like that, because JB has this characteristic. I mean, everybody thinks JB is this rough, like I said, smoking and hanging out in the back, whatever, not getting up, working out. But the thing about JB is I see a guy that really, really cares about his family, that loves that little boy, that loves his daughter, that loves his wife. And I think that's the JB that a lot of people don't get to see often enough. With Jagger coming around, you start, hey, look, Jagger's the best looking person in the family. He's the coolest Mooney there is. And so when he gets attention, I think people start to see a different side of JB, and I think that's really cool.
All right. So I want to move to another topic, but kind of like you had gone into a little bit, and it's your gym, Westfit. What made you decide to start your own gym in the first place?
So when I was quite a bit younger, I was really overweight, and I was not healthy at all. I had never worked out. I was intimidated by the gym, but I decided one day that I needed to get healthy. I needed to lose some weight, and I went and joined a gym, and I got a membership, and I didn't want to work out right then because there were people in there. So I left, and I came back a few hours later, and there were people still there. So I sat in my car and I pulled out and I left, and I came back a few hours later, and I finally at midnight that night got my first workout in. I walked in, nobody else was around. I started working out, and I was just never really comfortable in the gym. I was very uncomfortable, and I just kind of always in the back of my mind from that point, I decided I wanted a gym that I could open where everybody could be comfortable and everybody would get along, whether they were 70 or 80 years old, or they were 17 or 18, if they were super overweight, or if they were a bodybuilder. I wanted everybody to get along and be part of the same family. And I just always wanted from that point to open a gym like that. And so finally it happened one day, and we opened a gym, and it's so cool to see everybody get along and help each other. And we've got just a great big gym family here. But it all started from me starting my own fitness journey and going from being super unhealthy, knowing that I needed to change some things or I was going to get really sick. And I had to do it. And I started loving it and enjoying the process a lot more. And I still get intimidated sometimes when I go into other gyms, but I realize that I have to focus on, that's one of the times in life where I think it's important to be selfish, is when you go into a gym. I'm not worried about what everybody else thinks. I'm not worried about what everybody else looks like. I'm worried about me and how to make myself better. And so, that's kind of the backstory on this little place. And it's turned into, I love it. I mean, I'm sitting in my office here at the gym now. So it's certainly something that I'm grateful for.
So how much does it kind of help you out, like with having your own business in a gym like that, and then also still having the job in PBR? How much does it help you out having both?
I wouldn't have a gym if it wasn't for my career in the PBR. There's just no way I would have been able to make this happen. I could not have been able to afford to build this business the way I have. And so I'm truly grateful that I've had the opportunities and the career that I have in the bull riding world to be able to do this. So without one, I wouldn't have the other.
All right. So I want to make to 2021 real quick. So even guys like Flint have admitted that there were so many doubts heading into the start of 2021 in Ocala, but then you started to see the success it had, and like a crowd like Okeechobee was, when it was just packed each day, and even more packed on Sunday, which you guys have said is not really the typical thing. It'd be packed just like Saturday, more Saturday compared to Sunday. How much does that success like feel for you?
For me, there was never any doubt from me. The fact that we were going to get to go to work was the greatest thing ever. I mean, it really was. There was a few of us that just, again, it didn't matter where we were at. We didn't care how big the crowd was. We were getting to go watch the best bull riders in the world do what they do. And so we were ready to do it. It has been a very, very pleasant start to 2021. The crowds have been awesome. We're not in the big, sold out arenas, but we're in places that are unbelievably cool. Ocala, Arcadia, Okeechobee. We're getting ready to go to Del Rio, Pecos, Longview. Like I've never been to any of these places. Every single one of them I've fallen in love with because the people there appreciate our athletes and they appreciate that we're coming in there and doing these events. So, man, it's awesome. It's so cool. And like I say, 2021, after 2020, doesn't matter where we're going. If we're getting to go to work, I'm excited. I don't care who is there. I don't care how many people are there. I don't care what town it's in. We get to go to work. It's awesome.
So with these being outdoor venues and like you guys have kind of like had the opportunity to arrange the seating charts, however you guys felt like it, unlike in a like event like Lincoln or Des Moines where everybody had to be spread out. Was it like starting to see people shoulder to shoulder like they have been in Florida?
Well, it looks a little different on TV. I thought the same thing. I thought, man, we're just packing them in here. But then I started talking, and then I started really paying attention. There's still some COVID protocols put into place. Like every other row is empty in these venues and different things like that. There still is, some seating things. It just looks so much different on TV because the venues are smaller. They're not as spread out. And so for a lot of us, it looks a lot more crowded than it really is, but there's still COVID protocols being implemented and being put into place. But like you say, at the end of the day, and there's as many people in these venues as we can get in safely. And man, that's for us, that's a win. That's a huge victory and a huge step in the right direction, I think. Personally, that's my opinion. But I think the more that we start to open up, the more we start to move forward, the better we all are.
So you did bring up that as of right now, you guys are getting ahead of Del Rio this weekend. So the temperatures for this weekend in Del Rio are supposed to be way colder than it was in Florida.
Yep.
Is that going to feel a little bit weird with that transition still being outdoors also?
Yeah, I mean, it's 18 degrees where I'm at right now. The roads have been slick with ice and it snowed this morning. It's really, really cold here. I don't like the cold weather, but I'm not going to complain because I know it's colder a lot more where you're at than it is where I am. But here's the thing. I put on an extra Wrangler shirt and I throw on a heavier Wrangler jacket and I go and I do my job for a few hours. And then I go back to the hotel room and have a big smile on my face because we just got to enjoy a PBR. And that's it. Again, I don't care. I don't care if we do it in the middle of a snowstorm. If we get to go to work and I get to watch these guys do what they do, it doesn't bother me a bit. I don't like the cold. I would much rather be in the sunshine of Florida, but doesn't matter. If we're getting to do it, we're getting to do it.
All right. So kind of on the serious side of Del Rio, it's an arena that has so much history behind it. The George Parr Memorial was that going to be like stepping like into that arena, getting an announce there, and then was it also like in the past going to venues like Cheyenne? Was it like getting to go to these historic venues?
Same thing as Madison Square Garden. These venues have a name, they have a reputation because of the things that have happened there, because of their history. And so every time you get to go to a place like this, you take a moment and you realize what's happened there in the past and that you get to be there and enjoy that moment and don't take it for granted. And that's what I'm going to do in Del Rio. That's the same thing I'm going to do in, Madison Square Garden or wherever it is. You reflect on what's happened there and how lucky we are to be there and enjoy it and don't take it for granted.
That just kind of made me think of something. So back in 2018, and I think 2017, 2016, the PBR had that Celebrate America, like kind of like thing going for the tour. And one of the events that they brought was Fairfax, Virginia. Was it like being able to bring that Celebrate America feeling so close to the nation's capital?
Awesome. I got to spend the week with U.S. Border Patrol and several agents from the Border Patrol. I have some friends that are in Congress there in Washington, D.C. I have so much love for this country. And again, it goes back to kind of like New York City and LA and Vegas. For me, growing up, I never thought I would see the White House. I never thought I would be in Washington, D.C. So to get to go there, see everything, take politics and all of my opinions out, just to see those places is pretty incredible. To know that we were that close to DC and we had so many. The best part of it is we had so many Border Patrol agents. We had so many men and women in law enforcement, so many men and women from our U.S. military at all of those events those years. That was the best part about it. We got to celebrate the greatest country in the world, but we got to celebrate it with the heroes that make it the greatest country in the world. And so, yeah, I'll always remember that, and I'll always be grateful for that. So,
that did just make me think of something. And going to DC, going to LA, going to New York, what has been like traffic wise the worst city to be in for you?
New York City is horrible. There's a reason that people don't own cars in New York City, because you can't drive them anywhere. It's bumper to bumper. New York City traffic, especially in January, it's brutal. I would never want to drive in New York City. But man, all those big cities are like that kind of. I like living where we live, kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, like, yeah, like we had gone to New York City in 2020 for the PBR, and I drove us about up to New Jersey where our hotel was, and then my mom took the rest of the way, and like seeing how much she was struggling driving through the city, I'm like, I am happy I did not decide to drive the rest of the way.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna move back to something a little bit, like talk about the Super Bowl, and then with the PBR. Like, what does it feel like being one of the only sport, or the first sport to finish a year off with its gold mine, going almost the whole entire year of fans, only except for 4 events, and then also being in the same boat as the NFL, having finishing the year off with that goal of finishing the year with fans almost the whole entire way.
I mean, it's like the NFR, because we had a goal in mind and we worked towards it and we got to accomplish it. And I think that whether it was exactly the way we had it planned or not, the fact that we got to do it, it's like I compare a lot of things to like my fitness journey. When I started, I was, say, 300 pounds. Ultimately my goal might have been to get to 205, and I might have wanted to do it in a year. Well, if I didn't get it done in a year and it took me 14 months, if I still got to my goal, I still celebrated when I got to that goal. Same thing happened in our world in 2020. It didn't look exactly the same, but we completed the task. We completed the season, and we got to the goal that we had set at the beginning of the year, when a lot of other people in the world didn't. And so we had to just be grateful, thankful, and feel blessed that we did it. And we had to feel proud that we accomplished it, because there was a lot of people that gave up, a lot of people that couldn't figure it out. So there's a sense of pride that comes with that. And when you wrap things up on the last day of the World Finals, you go, man, we did it. And you hug everybody that's around you. You pat your friends on the back and you tell them great job, and you enjoy it for about 24 hours. And then the next day you start working on the next goal in 2021.
I'm just kind of curious because it kind of struck like me and my dad at surprise the last day of the finals. Did you guys ever expect to have Randy Travis there right behind you guys?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that, because Randy has come to, I mentioned that I've announced the American a handful of times, and I've done the PBR there at AT&T Stadium. Randy comes to several events there at AT&T Stadium. He and his wife have become friends of mine and my fiance's. We've gotten to know them, you know, over the last couple of years. I actually took like Randy and his wife and some of their family came to a little deal we do in Vegas called Rodeo Vegas during the NFR. It's a little after party and concert. And so yeah, it didn't surprise me at all. They're great people. They're great fans of Western sports, of the PBR, of rodeo. They're good people. So no, didn't surprise me at all. But it's always awesome because I'm a huge country music fan and I love some Randy Travis. So
Just kind of curious, real quick. What is your opinion on the country music that is coming out today that people say is country music?
with a lot of friends in the industry, I like old country music. Like, I love Daryl Singletary and George Jones and George Strait, like anything that's like quote unquote country, but I also love music. I love music in general. I It's like people. Why put a label on it anymore? Why put a name on it? If good music is good music, and not everybody likes the same music, and that's okay. Not everybody likes the same flavor pizza. We're not bitching and moaning about somebody else likes pepperoni and I like Canadian bacon. No, just enjoy what you enjoy and appreciate what you enjoy. So I like the old stuff and I like traditional country music, but there's a lot of new artists out there that are incredibly talented. So I like music. I don't care if it's rap, country, Metallica, AC/DC. I like it all. I mean, for goodness sakes, my fiance's got me listening to Lizzo every once in a while. And I don't even know what a Lizzo is. So whatever.
All right. So just a couple more questions I got for you. So 2020 being the year that was, brings so many obstacles, so many challenges, and then even for you getting COVID in the middle of the year. When it's that stressful, and also when the PBR in just a normal year can be such a stressful and challenging time, how much does your faith keep you up and going through the whole entire year?
It's the only thing we have to get us through every day. And it's something that I don't talk enough about, I think, is my faith and my belief in God getting us through different things. I did a podcast with Leanne Hart and we really got to dive into it and talk about it. But without God, nothing in life is possible. And so we have to remember that even in the toughest times, that we've got somebody on our team that can get us through it, no matter what it is. And knowing that he has a bigger purpose for us than anything we can ever dream of, you just have to have that faith, and you just have to believe that no matter what happens, there is a plan and there's a bigger purpose than what we can even see or what we can even dream about. So it's the only thing that got us through 2020. It's the only thing that gets me through every day, because as tough as we want to talk about how 2020 was, we all have days. It doesn't matter if it's 2020, 2021, 2012, like everybody has rough days. Everybody has those days where you don't feel like anything's going to go right, where you feel like everything's against you, and you just have to know that, you know what, I'm not in this alone. And I've got a God that's going to make sure that I'm taken care of and that my purpose is bigger than I realize. And so, yeah, it's the most valuable thing any of us can have, and that is faith. So.
All right. And then the last question I got for you, which is also kind of the reason why I started this podcast, because I saw a video from the UBF. It was like of what legacies they want to leave. Mm-hmm. Whenever day comes that you're out of the sport, what legacy do you hope to leave?
I want people to look back and say that I was a good son, a good husband, a good dad. And then I tried as hard as I could every day to be the best person I could possibly be. I say at the end of my podcast every week, every day is an opportunity to get better. And I think a lot of times people misconstrue that. I think every day is an opportunity for us to get better in our careers, in our business, in our health, whatever it is. But I think every day is a chance for us to be a better human. And that's my biggest thing. I hope that people will look back and say he tried as hard as he could every day to be the best person he could be. So that's it, man.
All right. Thank you, Matt, for joining me this afternoon. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate getting to talk to you also.
Man, I appreciate you having me. Look forward to the rest of the episodes. Keep killing it. You're doing an awesome job. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Matt, and can't wait to hear whatever else you put out.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, buddy. Stay warm up there, okay?
Yeah.
All right, man.